Hello, welcome everyone to the Expat Focus Health and Finance Summit 2024. It's the first summit that we've run, so please bear in mind or bear with us if we encounter any tech issues. A recording of the presentations will be available on the Expat Focus YouTube channel later on. And I would encourage you to subscribe to all our social channels, which you can find by going to expatfocus.com and scrolling to the footer. And don't forget to click the bell icon to get notified when the recording is available. You can sign up to the Expat Focus newsletter there too. So on today's agenda, we have 4 half-hour segments. To begin with, Michael Condron from Cigna Global will be discussing international private medical insurance. Half an hour later, Bessa Aliti will be sharing strategies for thriving emotionally while you live abroad. Oliver Heslop will then provide expert tax advice for expats moving to or from the UK. And Euan McLachlan will explain the benefits of using a broker for international currency transfers. Please submit your questions and comments anytime on the social platform you're using, and we'll do our best to put them to the experts, time permitting. Please also note the information provided in the summit is for informational purposes only, and you should always seek your own personalized advice. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Michael Condron from Cigna Global. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you very much, Hugo, for the introduction, and really glad to be here. Thank you for giving us this platform today.
That's great. Before you start, let me just say a bit about Michael's background. Michael has helped hundreds of individuals and their families purchase health insurance during his 6 years at Cigna Healthcare. He works with people in various circumstances, studying, work relocation and retirement, and uses Cigna's extensive product offering to tailor plans to suit every individual's need and budget. So without further ado, over to you, Michael.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Hugo, and welcome everybody. Thanks very much for your time today. So I'll take you through the agenda for today. So initially, we're going to look at what is expat insurance, and also who are the types of people that tend to need it or want it. Then we'll look at some of the differences between international health insurance versus other types of insurance that maybe people have seen or have used in the past, such as travel insurance and local insurance, looking at the key differences. Then we're going to move on to the kind of main bulk of the presentation, which are those 5 reasons why expats tend to choose international health insurance, and we can look at those in some level of detail. Then I can summarize and just make sure I recap everything and bring it all back to the expat health insurance, and then hopefully at the end have enough time to answer any questions that may come up throughout the presentation. So don't worry, I should have some time to pick these up as they come in throughout the deck. Okay, so what is expat health insurance? So I think a lot of people will know about private medical insurance and some of the benefits of private medical insurance. But this is insurance that's specifically tailored to individuals who are living and working abroad. Okay. So these are people who are globally mobile. They've maybe moved overseas to study, maybe relocated for work, maybe relocated in retirement. Maybe it's always been a dream to kind of live out their days in a certain country or region. So this is insurance specifically designed for those types of people. Now, the types of the reasons why people then would need private medical insurance when they're moving overseas. There's a few kind of main reasons. Maybe they're moving into a country where they won't have access to public healthcare, whether they're not eligible due to circumstance, residency status, nationality, age, means assessed. If they're never going to have access to private healthcare, if they are to get sick or require any treatment, they're very much on their own. So they'll need an insurance policy in place to make sure that they're protected themselves, their family are protected in the case of any kind of medical emergency. There are people then that are moving into countries who very much plan to move onto public healthcare, onto local healthcare, but maybe won't be eligible for it straight away. So they'll need a bridge. Sometimes if you're in a country, you need to wait for your residency to come through, your visa to come through, maybe wait for employment to begin. There can be a whole host of reasons why you maybe won't have access right away to healthcare. So you may need a bridge, a private medical insurance to protect you and protect your family in the time between you arriving in the country and then actually getting that through, so you have access to healthcare. And then the other big reason why expats sometimes will look at private medical insurance is they've maybe lived in a country or worked in a country for a long time where they're used to a certain standard of healthcare. Maybe they're moving to a part of the world where medicine isn't as developed or isn't as available. There's not as much availability for good quality healthcare. Maybe that's the perception, maybe that's the case, but for peace of mind for themselves, for their families, they want to make sure that they have access to private medical insurance, so that if they or their family members are sick or need treatment, that they're going to have access to the standard of healthcare that they're used to and that they feel comfortable with. Okay, so in terms of expat insurance then versus some of the other types of insurance that people maybe will see online or hear about from friends or maybe have had in the past, it's just worth highlighting because this is something that customers do tend to ask us about on a fairly regular basis. So when traveling to another country, it can be travel insurance that maybe you would tend to purchase for a short trip. And travel insurance is very much designed for short trips, for holiday makers. It's very much there from a healthcare perspective for emergencies. So if you have a bad accident, if you require hospitalization, then that travel insurance should provide that protection for you. It's also going to provide coverage for things like cancelled flights, lost luggage, hotel issues, all that sort of thing. What it's not going to provide coverage for is routine and elective medical treatments, and this is why this is expat health insurance is designed for. International health insurance is designed for. It's designed for people who are on the move, who are living in other countries, spending extended time, so that as well as being protected in the case of having a bad accident or needing emergency treatment from a hospital, they have access to both routine and emergency healthcare. So if you wake up and you've got a concern, you're feeling tired, fatigued, maybe lost a lot of weight recently, put on weight, maybe have a rash or another concern, the expat health insurance is going to allow you to go and get that properly investigated, go and see a doctor, have a referral, have a blood test, see a specialist, as well as that initial kind of access to investigate those types of issues. There's also a proactive element as well. So as rather than being reactive and waiting for something to happen, expat health insurance allows you to be proactive. So routine checkups, age appropriate cancer screenings, mental health support services. If something starts to feel wrong, or if you want the peace of mind to make sure everything's okay, that's the type of thing that expat health insurance is going to provide you. It's very much for the long term, including things like pregnancy, dental treatments, eye exams, glasses, all this sort of thing. It's much more comprehensive. It's about not just protecting you and your family, but allowing you and your family to maintain and protect your health moving forward. Probably even more common than customers asking us about the difference between international medical insurance and travel insurance is the difference between local insurance and international medical insurance. So probably the most obvious difference to point out is the area of coverage. So a local health insurance plan is just going to cover you in the one country. So it's not going to cover you abroad at all. Whereas an international medical insurance policy is going to cover you in the country where you are, but it's also going to extend internationally as well. Now, international health insurance policies there may be a better fit for some families who maybe find themselves in different places. So sometimes maybe somebody needs to go and work in a different country, maybe children studying a different country, maybe there's travel due to family commitments. An international health insurance policy is going to protect the family regardless of where they are. rather than just statically in the one country. The international medical insurance is also going to travel with you. So if you are moving for work and there's a likelihood that you might need to move again, maybe move again, and that's kind of the lifestyle that you've decided to leave, or if your retirement plans include spending time in multiple different countries, with a local insurance policy, you're going to need to cancel that policy down every time you move, go back to market, go back through an application process. And this can be quite time consuming, quite stressful. And as you get older with health insurance, it can become more difficult to find a healthcare partner. Whereas an international medical insurance policy is going to travel with you. So if you decide to move countries, if you decide to go back home for trips, then that then means that that international medical insurance is providing the protection. It's one less thing to worry about, one less thing to stress about. You and your family really do have a protection for life, kind of regardless of where you find yourselves being. Having that international element also provides a level of choice as well. So typically with a local health insurance policy, you may find that it's quite restrictive in terms to networks. Maybe there's only certain hospitals that you can use. By nature of international health insurance, and particularly with Cigna Healthcare, outside of the US, we don't have any network restriction, meaning you can go to any provider, any doctor. So not only does that provide maybe ease and convenience in terms of if you're traveling, you can go to the nearest hospital, to the nearest doctor. There's also an elective element to that as well. So if you decide, because you require a certain type of treatment, that you want to seek out the best doctor, the best hospital, then that then means that you can choose to go where you want to go, whether that's in the same city, the same town, even the same country. You can really maximize your options in terms of where you want to get treated. And because the nature of health insurance, international health insurance, because different countries have different prices, you will also tend to find that the benefit limits on health on international plans needs to be higher. So whereas maybe local health plans is very much specific to the sorts of limits that are required for that local market, international health insurance, because they need to cater for more markets, tend to have higher benefit limits. So as well as having more choice in terms of where you go for treatment, you're also likely to have more choice because you have more benefit limit to use up in terms of the treatment that you want to go and get, and really have access to the best hospitals, the best doctors to aid with your recovery. So that one's to the kind of main part of the presentation then, the 5 reasons why individuals and families tend to choose an international medical insurance policy. So the first one is probably the reason why people buy any type of insurance is financial security. This is probably more important with healthcare than any other type of insurance. And the reason for that is when somebody gets sick, whether it's yourself or a member of your family, that's a really, really stressful time. Particularly with certain diagnosis, then there's a long treatment plan, a long battle ahead. And what you don't want is, as well as worrying about the health concern, worrying about how you're going to pay for your treatment. If you don't have access to any healthcare, if you don't have access to good healthcare, then you're sitting there thinking, how am I paying for this treatment? I need to use up my savings, maybe sell my assets. That's a lot of stress that can be taken away with a good comprehensive insurance policy, knowing that if you get sick, as stressful as that will be, you can focus all of your energy and your attention on getting better and not worrying about how you're going to pay your bills. Quality healthcare across the globe. Okay, so this is about having that flexibility of international cover to travel with you. If you're living in another country, the chances are you are going to have trips back home. You are going to find yourself in different places by nature of being an expat, being globally mobile. You're going to find yourself in different situations. And it's just not ever having to have that concern of, am I covered? What if something happens? Having that choice of provider, being able to go to any hospital, any doctor to seek out the best treatment. And one of the great things about Cigna Healthcare, if you do need to go for treatment, if you do need to go to hospital, Cigna has access to over 1.5 million direct billing partners. That means if you go for treatment rather than having to pay and claim the money back, Cigna's in a position to be able to pay your bill directly to the hospital, taking even more stress away and giving you even more chance to focus on your recovery, focus on your family, and making sure that you get better. Teams of experts at your service. So Cigna is a global company, one of the largest insurance companies in the world. We appreciate some of the challenges when you're living in another country. So having somebody on the phone 24/7, 365 days a year to help you with claims, help you find providers, help you gain access to different resources in terms of life management assistance. Having that support there is really important to make sure that people never feel alone. Clinical support is all about providing peace of mind and guarantee. If you're in a country where maybe you don't speak the language, you may not be overly confident or comfortable with what the doctor's told you, what your diagnosis is, what your treatment plan is. So having access to clinical support to explain a diagnosis, to explain a treatment plan, a second opinion service, really is that peace of mind, that comfort for when potentially people are going through quite a stressful time. So that's really important, particularly if you're in a country where maybe you don't speak the language. Faster access to treatment. So one of the big benefits of private healthcare is you tend to get seen faster. You get quicker response time from doctors, less waiting times. And then one thing I do want to spend quite a bit of time on in the time that I have left is the remote consultations. This has been huge for people over the past few years, particularly with lockdowns. And if you're in countries and maybe not familiar with the transport systems, maybe you haven't got a car yet, being able to use your phone to phone a doctor or to have a video consultation with a doctor any time of day in any country in multiple languages, this is a real lifeline for both single people and families. Getting advice, getting things for children, getting prescriptions, the remote consultation, having that available, as well as as well as having access to various mental health support to the life management assistance as well. It's all about convenience and flexibility, giving you control over your healthcare. And then the fifth reason, this is all about being proactive in managing health. I've talked about this a few times. We try to talk to our customers, to our patients as much as we possibly can about going for a routine annual health check, going for age appropriate cancer screenings, access to vaccinations. That clearly was a big thing globally over the past couple of years. Access for child vaccinations. These are things that maybe in some countries you'd be very used to, you'd be prompted through letters, etc. But if you don't have access to the healthcare, then you can find that these things kind of fall by the wayside. And we know through experience that if we can get people to go for their annual checkups, if they go for their cancer screenings, if they get their vaccinations, and then take the support from us on things like diet, like sleep, access to the mental health support, if we can catch things early and help people be proactive and take back a bit of control with their health, that makes the whole process of treatment much easier, provides more treatment options, easier treatment. The earlier we can find things, the easier it will be. And that's all done through being proactive with your health. So just to summarize them, we appreciate and one of the most rewarding parts of my job, people are often living out their dream, moving overseas, whether it's for work, for study, they're retiring into the sun, they've had for whatever reason, it's an exciting thing. But it certainly does have a specific set of challenges for health and well-being. It can be really daunting. Moving to a new country is stressful enough, and some of the other speakers today will talk about all the other things that you need to have on your plate. And healthcare is really important. Um, so by getting in touch, by understanding your options, by setting up a plan that suits both your needs and your budget, protects you, protects your family, and provides the kind of resources and support that you may need, that can help make sure that the transition is an enjoyable one. If this has been your dream, then then Cigna can support and make sure that your health is protected, and in fact your health and your family's health kind of flourishes moving forward. So look, I really appreciate the time there, and yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions that may have come through.
Michael, thank you very much for that presentation. Really interesting, really useful. We've had some questions come in while you've been talking. The first one is there an age limit on Cigna health insurance policies for expats?
No, so yeah, no, there is no upper age limit for Cigna health insurance policies. We really do cater for the entire market from student all the way up to retirement. So yeah, we have people in their 80s, their 90s, even a couple of people in their hundreds living out that dream of thinking, right, I'm going to make that move. So no upper age limit. And just to add to that, which is also really beneficial, age can increase premium, but once you reach the age of 82, Cigna will no longer increase your premium based on your age. So it's not as if it will get more and more and more and more expensive as you get older. That flattens out at 82. So no, no upper age limit. Really do cater for people of all ages.
That's great. Another question is, if I get sick, will that affect my renewal cost?
Absolutely not. No. So claims do not impact renewal at all. So if you are to get really sick, your policy will remain in place for as long as you want it to remain in place. And claims will have no impact on your renewal price. So your renewal price will be the same whether you don't use your policy at all, or if you claim $1 million. We wouldn't want to cause any issues with the long-term health. So there is no impact at all on renewal price based on any claims that are made.
One question I had was, are there limits on what countries the cover or you cover? Is it always global, or do you specify particular countries when you take out a policy?
Yes, so we do have a few different options. So we can provide policies that cover all countries, or we do offer a policy that just covers two. So yeah, it's really just taking the time to understand kind of what the requirements are, whether you will be moving about, what if there are people in the family that maybe will be in different places at different times. So yeah, we do have solutions, and we just tailor that to the individual that we're speaking to.
Okay, another sort of age-related question in a sense at the other end of the spectrum. Do you cover students?
We do, yes. So students is a big part of what we do. To be the main policyholder, you do need to be 18 years of age. So we can cover people under 18, but they'll need to be an over 18 on the plan as well. But for those kind of university age and studying, yes, we cover students, and in fact, it's particularly at this time of year, fairly frequent.
Questions coming in thick and fast. There was one that we sort of just missed that came up on the screen earlier. Do you offer discounts?
Yes, we do from time to time. So in fact, at the moment, we are offering a family discount. So for any families of 3 or more people, we are providing a 10% discount. And that 10% discount is not just for the first year. That in fact is for the lifetime of the policy. We also have some senior discounts running, and we do other promotions and discounts throughout the year. So yeah, always worth speaking to us. And yeah, we typically have something that that we can offer. So yeah, always worth getting in touch and asking the question.
And so somebody asked, please would you explain the process of making a claim with Cigna?
Yeah, absolutely. So our preference is direct billing. So where it's possible, we'll look to pay the provider direct, so the hospital or the doctor or the dentist or whoever it is has provided the treatment. If for whatever reason they don't accept direct billing, which can happen in some countries, maybe it's a smaller practice, they don't have the infrastructure, systems, etc. You can still use them. You would pay your claim, submit your claim online, which can be done through your customer area, and that's processed then in 5 working days, and we would reimburse the money back into your bank account.
Okay. Are there any specific health coverages that expats often overlook?
Yes, I think the part of our policy, I think that we talk to customers about the most is our outpatient, as the outpatient part of our policy. So often people will be looking for what maybe they describe as catastrophic cover, just looking for cover for major things. So if they're hit by a car or have a heart attack or something like that. But what they maybe overlook is the importance of including ongoing outpatient treatments on their policy. So they may think, right, I only go to see a doctor maybe once or twice a year. That's only going to be 40, 50 euros or dollars or pounds a time. I can pay that myself. Um, but the problem with that is if you're then diagnosed with a condition that requires you to go to a doctor once a month, get a prescription, get follow-ups, get blood tests, get checkups, these are then the things that can add up over time. And once these conditions have been diagnosed, it can then be difficult to get insurance for it. So we just talk about the importance of not just covering yourself for major emergencies, but potentially things that become ongoing as well. So just making sure that people understand the options and make sure they understand what they're covered for, and I suppose importantly what they're not.
I think one of the really interesting things in your presentation was about I imagine a lot of people need temporary cover when if they move to a country where they will be covered by a local system, but that's often not the case straight away, and you may have to wait.
Yeah.
And there may be kind of visa restrictions or on accessing. I wondered if the majority or a good proportion of your clients are in that situation, or more likely moving from to countries where there isn't a reliable system and they need sort of ongoing cover.
Yeah, it's really varied. There are some markets where people will either never have access to the healthcare or they want private healthcare. Um, and that's probably the bulk. Most of the people we're speaking to are looking for long-term solution. Potentially because they know that beyond that year or the 2 years, however long it may be, they may end up moving somewhere else and moving somewhere else. So they want to have a policy then that will move with them and essentially they can keep for the rest of their lives if they so wish. But yes, we do also find that we do get quite a few people who say, look, I'm moving in here and I'm going to need a policy. But the biggest challenge they have is they don't know how long they're going to need to wait. So having that kind of flexible solution to say, right, I might need it for a month, I might need it for 6 months, I might need it for a year. So we just make sure that they understand how the product works, how the cancellation process works, so that they can have that protection in place for however long it is that they need it.
Great, thanks. Well, we've just got a couple of minutes left, so hopefully time for one or two last questions. Do you carry out reviews of people with pre-existing conditions?
Yes. So all of our policies are subject to medical underwriting. We would take you through a medical application at once we've agreed on a policy, once we've agreed on a level of cover, and then all of our applications are assessed case by case by our underwriting team. So we'll look in and look to offer the best possible terms we can. It's always a case by case. It really depends on the medical questions.
And one final question: I imagine that when you're an expat, you sometimes, if there was a medical emergency, you'd be wanting potentially to be repatriated to your home country rather than deal with in the sort of country where you're living. Does Cigna policies include repatriation in those situations?
They certainly can do, yes. So a lot of people would want that for peace of mind, particularly maybe parents who are purchasing policy for a student. Also, we find that a lot of countries, that's part of their visa requirement. So both repatriation, medical repatriation or evacuation if treatment's required, but also we can include repatriation of mortal remains, which also does sometimes come up as a requirement for visas. So yes, we can include those things if they're needed or wanted.
Digital nomads? Do you cover digital nomads who are roaming from country to country?
We do, yeah. In fact, that's becoming more popular over the past few years. People kind of really move it around, and that really is the almost an archetypal person that these types of policies are designed for. people that are going to be moving around and need a flexible solution for healthcare. So absolutely, yes, it's something that it's the type of people that we speak to on a fairly regular basis.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you very much for joining us today. To our viewers, if you want to get a quote or talk to somebody at Cigna, head over to expatfocus.com and look in the services drop down. Michael, I'm going to drop you out of the summit, and I'm going to welcome Bessa. Bessa, I think you need to unmute. And
hello.
Thank you very much for joining us. How are you today?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Let me just say, for the benefit of our viewers, Bessa is a member of the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapy. Bessa has been practicing therapy for over 7 years and currently manages her own private practice in Notting Hill in London. Bessa will be talking today, sharing some strategies for thriving emotionally while living abroad for expats. So without further ado, because I'm sure there'll be lots of questions again, Bessa, over to you.
Thank you. Can you see my presentation? Yes. Okay, I'm going to cover just a bit of sort of basic idea of journey of an expat. Let's see. So the journey of an expat is usually an exciting one, but it also comes with its challenges. So these would be the phases that many of us encounter along the way. We can start with anticipation. In this phase, we're filled with hope and excitement as we prepare to move abroad. Many of us will research our new destination, fantasize about the adventures and opportunities that might await us there. But during this phase, and it's very common to experience anticipation, nervousness, and optimism. After arriving at our new home, we often experience what is known as the honeymoon phase. Everything feels fresh and exciting as we immerse ourselves in the sights, sounds, and flavors of our new environment. We might find ourselves fascinated by the novelty, but it's important to recognize that this initial euphoria might give way to a different reality as time passes. And as the honeymoon phase fades, we come to culture shock that many expats will experience. This is when the differences between our home country and our new environment become very apparent. We may struggle to navigate unfamiliar customs, language barriers, and social norms. This is the time when feelings of isolation, frustration, and homesickness may begin to surface. And it's a bit of a challenging phase of adjustment. Gradually, we get used to our new surroundings and we enter the adjustment phase. We start to find our footing, building new routines and forming deeper connections within our expat community. This phase is marked by adaptation and resilience as we learn to navigate the ups and downs of expat life. And while challenges may still arise, we start feeling more confident in our abilities to overcome them. As time goes on, many of us will reach a stage of mastery. In this phase, we don't feel like outsiders anymore, but rather integral members of our new community. And we have developed a deeper understanding and appreciation for the culture and customs of our host country. While we may still encounter obstacles along the way, we face them with a sense of confidence and self-assurance. So let's talk a bit more about managing culture shock, as it's one of the most challenging aspects of expat life. So this is a natural response to the unfamiliarity and disorientation, which often accompanies life in a new country. It can often manifest in many ways, which would be homesickness, language barriers, social isolation, cultural misunderstandings. So we struggle to communicate effectively in a language that we don't really recognize or we are little familiar with. There might be unfamiliar customs, traditions, and social norms. We could be longing for familiar faces and places and comfort from home. And sometimes the culture shock can be overwhelming, but there are different strategies we can employ to manage the impact. such as social support would be very important. And I always recommend to reach out to fellow expats, also locals and support groups, but especially expats, because when we share our experiences with others who understand and have a similar experience, this can provide a sense of validation and belonging. Embracing cultural differences is very also important, and if we approach it with an open mind and a willingness to learn, and we take the time to explore and appreciate the unique traditions and customs and perspectives of our new host country, engaging with the local community will give us a deeper sense of connection and understanding and ease in the culture shock. Staying connected with our loved ones back home is important. It's good to have a regular communication, either through phone calls or video chats, and just sharing our updates about our life and staying involved in the lives of those that we care about will provide the sense of continuity and support during the periods of homesickness. Very important as an expat and in general is to practice self-care. So really to think about our physical, emotional, and mental well-being, and to try to prioritize self-care practices like exercise and meditation, especially mindfulness, and different kind of hobbies and activities. Just engaging in activities that will bring us joy and fulfillment can really help with the stress and promote a sense of balance in our new environment. Social anxiety. So some of us struggle, actually, right? Many of us will struggle with isolation and social anxiety in our home countries, let alone in a foreign one. Self-isolation can become a significant problem as it takes an effort to engage in a new and awkward culture. And sometimes I say we are our own worst enemy, because being left with our own thoughts can actually increase social anxiety and our reluctance to engage with others. And the more we isolate ourselves, the more difficult it becomes to engage in a new community. Because in general, whenever we avoid certain situations, we are signaling to our brain that there is a reason for fearing them, and it just amplifies the fear. Experiencing social anxiety as an expat can come from various sources. Usually it's fear of judgment, language barriers, or some past negative experiences. And to overcome it, we can consider certain strategies. For example, as far as gradual exposure, that will deal with our sense of fear. So just gradually exposing ourselves to situations that make us anxious. We can start with smaller, less intimidating interactions and slowly work our way up to more challenging scenarios. And in this way, we can build confidence and reduce anxiety over time. As far as cognitive behavioral strategies, what we want to do is practice observing our thoughts. And we want to notice our negative interpretation and challenge and reframe our negative thoughts that contribute to social anxiety, and replace them with a more realistic or positive perspectives. For example, entering a new environment and thinking everybody will judge me. We will feel one way, but if we try to think differently, like people are generally kind and understanding, it will make us feel much different and more open to interacting. Mindfulness and relaxation is, I think it's a very important skill to practice. I've put here free online source. It's a course on practicing and learning about mindfulness that I recommend to everybody. And also there are obviously many other sources online. But this is a very good tool as far as managing anxiety and social anxiety. So deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, and mindfulness meditation will calm your mind and body, which makes it obviously easier to engage with others. Setting small goals, achievable social goals for yourself, such as starting a conversation with a neighbor or attending a local event or engaging in some kind of activity and having a little conversation with a participant. And it's also important to celebrate your successes, no matter how small they are, because we oftentimes will take them for granted, but they're not small little things. They're little victories, and we want to use them as motivation to just continue pushing forward our boundaries. Living authentically, I think, is generally a very important goal for us. But also, especially living in a foreign country where nobody knows us, can also presents challenges, but it's also a great opportunity. Many will leave their home country to start a new life where they can be anonymous and they can be whoever they want to be. And this freedom, where starting a new life offers us really this opportunity to live authentically without the judgment that we might perceive or that we might have in our home country from extended family or friends. Let's see. So as far as living authentically, what we want to be doing is we want to just reflect on who we are. We oftentimes will take these things for granted and don't really think about our values, our passions, and what brings us joy. So we want to use this time to really reflect and reflect on our actions and decisions in this new environment. Living abroad also offers us an opportunity to reinvent ourselves and explore new interests and passions that we might have been scared to explore in our home countries. We want to think about establishing healthy boundaries with others to protect our authentic selves, to be clear about our needs and values and limits, and to communicate them to others around us. Building relationships with people who accept and appreciate us for who we are is very important. We want to surround ourselves with supportive, like-minded individuals who encourage us to be ourselves. So really paying attention to how different people make us feel and making sure that those are the types of relationship we put effort in. The relationship with ourselves is the most important relationship we will ever have. Many of us are not aware of what we're feeling at any given moment, what our values are, what we need, what energizes us. And I would say we often live on an autopilot. So we don't want to take things for granted. We want to try to live deliberately and consciously and spend the time to actually learn about ourselves. The challenge that expat life presents can also be seen as an opportunity, and especially in the early stages where we might spend more time by ourselves, we can learn to meet ourselves in new situations, to learn about ourselves, and to build a better relationship with ourselves through the following: self-reflection, so just reflecting on our thoughts and feelings and really focusing on our body and what our body's trying to tell us, not dismissing our feelings. And journaling is a very good tool for this, just journaling our thoughts and feelings. And it also stops the overthinking. When we find ourselves ruminating about certain things, journaling is very helpful, as well as meditation and mindfulness practices. We already talked about identifying our values. We want to make sure that our actions and decisions do align with our values and that we live in accordance with our values, because that way we will feel a sense of purpose and fulfillment. As far as self-compassion, I find people usually find it very easy to be kind towards others and have empathy, but we oftentimes don't have the same empathy and understanding towards ourselves. So we want to practice this and really notice in which ways do we speak to ourselves. And especially during difficult times, this is the real test, as far as how do we treat ourselves, and can we be kind? Can we acknowledge our efforts and progress and offer ourselves the same type of compassion we would to a loved one? Let's see. The power of perception. Our attempts to describe the world outside is actually, they usually reveals more about ourselves than about the external reality. The interpretations of events and situations is what really influences our feelings and our behavior. So it's not the actual right events. So it's essential to really not take our interpretations for granted, but to observe them, and especially the thoughts that lead to anxiety. So we want to consider if there are alternative interpretations of a certain event, which might lead to different types of feelings. For example, again, if we're thinking other people are judging us, and then that will cause us a lot of anxiety and we will be reluctant to engage. Noticing that these are the thoughts we jump to, we want to think about replacing them with more positive alternative ones, like this is an opportunity to meet new people, learn something new, and it will make us feel more comfortable to engage. So we want to be thinking about reframing our thoughts in general, and just look at the patterns of our look at our thought patterns and whether we're jumping to negative conclusions automatically. As an expat, it's very important to approach new experiences and challenges with curiosity and desire to learn, and to reflect on our reactions and what they actually reveal about us. For example, if something bothers us, some kind of custom or tradition, we want to think about what does it say about us or our beliefs or our past experiences. Let me see. Okay. Creating a new social circle and forming new relationships is very crucial. We are social beings, so we really have this need to belong. So it's essential to reflect when meeting new people to see how they make us feel. Are we feeling guilty and small? Do we feel energized and at peace after engaging with certain people? As this will really affect how we see ourselves and our mood. So it's important, yes, to be aware of how different people make us feel. I'm trying to, let me see, so it's not too long. Let's see. Importance of asking for help. Well, many of us are used to never asking for help. Just in general, we might see it as a sign of weakness. We're very self-reliant, many of us, and they're just not, it doesn't occur to us at all as an option. So we suffer alone, and we oftentimes will engage with others only when we are at our best. And like I say to my clients, there's no reward for struggle the most. We really want to think about doing things differently and to remember to ask for help and to use any available resource in order to maintain our mental health. We want to acknowledge that it's okay to ask for help when we need it, and to recognize the signs of emotional and mental strain, and that seeking help is actually a sign of strength and not weakness. We want to identify and challenge the barriers that prevent us from asking for help. Again, to really observe our thoughts. Why am I not asking for help? Why am I just struggling on my own? Oftentimes, the barriers can be fear of judgment, or again, really valuing the self-reliance. But focusing on and taking advantage of the resources that are available to you, like counseling services, support groups, community organizations. These can all provide a very valuable support and guidance through difficult times. And there are embassies and consulates might also organize different kinds of events and support for expats. So we really want to use everything at our disposal to make our experience as best as possible. So basically, for navigating the emotional landscape of expat life would require resilience, a lot of self-awareness, and willingness to embrace change, and also just to expect that it's a journey. Just like life, it goes up and down. There will be great moments, and then there will be these lower moments, might, possibly, for example, loneliness or homesickness. And like I say, it's always it's important how we treat ourselves when we're at the lowest, and just to be very kind, self-reflective, and ask for help. I think this is it for me. Well, let's see. That would be the conclusion. Yeah. Thank you.
Bessa, thank you very much. It's really interesting.
Thank you.
I think it's a side of kind of living abroad that I think you don't think of before you move. Adapting and those sort of the difficulties in adapting when you set off on that, amazing adventure of being an expat. And really interesting to see that mapped out. And I've definitely experienced that. I know you've lived in lots of countries. So thank you very much. So we've got some great questions that have come in. Somebody asked, what are some early signs of culture shock that I should be aware of, and how can I address them before they escalate?
So some early signs of culture shock would be irritability, problems with sleep, feeling frustrated, having difficulty concentrating, and we can be also experiencing like feelings of loss or grief for our home country, for our past lives, for all our past relationships. So we want to address these things before they really become a bigger problem. We want to engage in self-care, in being very kind to ourselves, in creating new routines that we might find joy in, so new kind of hobbies. And we want to really seek social support. And the important part is also to really not be dismissive of this grief, but to allow ourselves to be sad and to grieve and to just process these feelings. And also, so this kind of part, and also we want to take it for granted as it is a part, it's an expected part of building a new life in a new country. And I usually say my experience has been with clients and my personal experience. Oftentimes it might take about a year for the adjustment and for the struggles to subside and for us to feel more comfortable.
That sounds true, I think, from my experience. Somebody else asked, how can I consistently remind myself to challenge negative interpretations in the moment?
What we want to do is we want to develop a habit, again, of observing our thoughts. And I find meditation and mindfulness practices are very good about this. So many clients will come and say, I can't do meditation, or I didn't do it correctly this time because I wasn't able to just focus and empty my brain. And there is no wrong way of doing this. It's actually very helpful practicing mindfulness and just observing the busy thoughts that we have. And so developing this kind of habit so that we can observe what are we actually thinking, and we can pause and we can question our thoughts. And the way what we want to be thinking is, because we go automatically to certain types of interpretations that we're used to. So we want to stop and think about, well, is there a different way of looking at the situation? What evidence do I have that supports or contradicts this thought? Can I take it to court? So really thinking, trying to really question some of these negative thoughts would be would help. And then we want to replace them with more positive and balanced perspectives. And journaling helps with this also a lot. Mm-hmm.
Somebody else asked, are there differences between men and women in terms of culture shock?
Not really. I wouldn't say so, because the gender doesn't really play a big role in this, because both men and women can be, you know, some of us are just better at connecting and some aren't, and it's not gender specific.
What about, sort of following on from that, what about children? I think there's something called expat child syndrome, when sometimes the whole family moves abroad because the parents want to, the children, have no choice. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
So you said for parents to move because of children, for the
Oh, sorry.
children to have better opportunities,
I
or
think, I think often, if a family moves abroad, it's the parents' choice, and the children are sort of, in a sense, don't have the choice in it, and leave their lives. And I think it's something I've read about in the past called expat child syndrome, where children move country, especially if they're a bit older, if they're teenagers. I wonder, do you have clients who are children too? Do you see that? Who have basically been sort of forcibly taken to another country without potentially wanting to, uprooted in a sense by their
well, I
parents.
haven't personally. I've had the expats that I have, they were being more teenagers or more like university, in my personal experience. But what I would always, I've worked with more adults in this situation. What I would say, and with the parents that are really worried about this, um, I find that it does build resilience actually, and children might object and not be happy about it initially, and they don't want the change, but just giving it time and offering a lot of support and just connection and attention to the child and coming in gently and softly will make the difference. And it makes them more adaptable and resilient. And we do learn a lot in adverse situations. They can be opportunities for growth. So I would say, it's good if that doesn't limit us. The fact that the child doesn't want to move, I feel they do adapt, and
Yeah,
not to be
and
scared of
actually,
that.
children, I think, as you say, adapt sometimes more easily than adults, or more
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah.
So another question was, you talked a little bit about, how our sense of identity changes as an expat, and
Mhm.
could you expand on that? I think, often that's sort of positive in the long term, because I think you do change. Your sense of who you are does change living in another country and another culture.
I feel it really offers this opportunity, and many expats that I hear talk about the anonymity, because it's a fresh start. Oftentimes, and I've had clients that were, that experience a new sense of freedom that they never experienced. For example, religious freedom, or just the freedom to sexually express themselves, or their gender identity, or their sexual identity. So oftentimes it can be this part of getting to know yourself again, and being whoever you want to be. And for some, it's for the first time exploring their values and their freedom without the fear of judgment, of their close ones that they experienced back home.
Yeah, how interesting. What about language? Do you think it's harder to adapt if you move to a country where you don't speak the language? Do you see that in your work?
It surely is. It surely is more difficult, and it can be even difficult to just do, right, just common little things, groceries, or like paying bills. It can be problematic. And absolutely, one I would say, needs to put effort into learning the language in order to feel more comfortable in the new country. But I also always say, expats should I think it's a great solution to stick to other expats. It really offers this community and the sense of understanding and validation, and everybody's in the same boat, and all expats are missing their families, so it oftentimes creates this new type of family. So regardless of language, expats sort of, I feel they can connect very, very quickly and easily. And there are lots of communities like this all over. Wherever you move, there will be some other expats going through the same thing you are.
Yeah, there are lots of sort of online meetup, springs to mind, meetup.com, I think it is.
Yeah.
yeah, there are Facebook groups, there are expat Facebook groups everywhere. There are lots. Yeah, it's not very easy nowadays to find online fellow expats. I think anywhere in the world probably.
Exactly. I find that we are really advantaged now with as far as technology and social networking. It's really making it easier. And you can find different forums, exactly, social groups where you can engage with other and meet other expats. We do need to put some effort, but it really makes all the difference for our well-being.
Okay, well, look, thank you very much. We've run out of time. It was a really interesting presentation. To our audience, head over if you'd like to find out more about Bessa and her practice or get some advice. It's bessaaliti.com. And thank you very much. I'm gonna drop you out, Bessa, and thank you again. And I'm going to welcome Oliver Heslop.
Hi there, Hugo.
Hi, Oliver. Good to see you. And so let me just say, for the benefit of our viewers, let me introduce you. Oliver is Managing Director of Global Expatriate Tax Services. He worked for a Big Four accounting firm for the first 15 years of his career, specializing in expatriate tax and global mobility. He has owned and run his own tax firm since 2010 and advised the largest multinationals at one end of the scale. At the other, he's just as comfortable advising individuals in connection with their move overseas. Welcome, Oliver.
Thanks, Hugo. Good to see you.
So,
how's it going?
Good. It's lots of interesting information. I'm looking forward to hearing your presentation. Am I right in thinking you specialize in UK tax?
I do UK tax. Yeah, I specialize in UK tax, but I have to do plenty of other taxes as well. To have a general knowledge of plenty of others. And if people drill down, then we partner up with somebody else in another country.
Okay. Did you have a presentation?
Yes, there is a presentation. They're just uploading at the moment.
Okay, perfect. So that's okay. I was just thinking I can't see it in the dashboard, so we'll just hang on a moment while that's uploading.
Yeah, sure. So so have you done your tax return, Hugo?
No, I haven't. I have to admit. So
you
get quite a lot of time, don't you, in the UK? So
yeah,
I've got a bit of time yet.
Absolutely. And everything's changing with the election at the moment. Everything is changing in tax. It's very difficult to give an opinion, you know.
Yeah, we don't know what's around the corner.
No.
So yeah. Aha.
There we go.
Okay. So yeah, let me take it away, I guess.
Okay, lovely. So this is me, Oliver Heslop. This is my firm, GETS, but I partner with a guy called Peter Farino. I'm based in London. He's based down in Spain, in Mallorca. And we've both got about 30 plus years experience in tax. We're both tax accountants. So that's us. And you can email me direct if you want to. Anybody, we still take all direct contacts to us to help sort of diagnose your problems. So what do we do? What do we actually do? So we look after British people anywhere in the world. So that would be, off the top of my head, America, Europe, Asia, Australia, you name it. We look after their tax and social security, because social security does still carry on as well as tax when you go abroad. So that's anybody overseas. And the countries that I haven't done yet, there aren't many left. I haven't done Iraq. I've done Iran. I've done Afghanistan. I've done Papua New Guinea. So Brits are everywhere. And the next slide has just leapt in, and that's just saying that we do people coming the other way. So I'm doing foreign nationals coming to the UK from any country, and we're doing their tax and social security. So my talk today will be about both sides of the coin, people leaving the UK and people coming. Oh, it's actually jumping on. I don't know how to stop that. Is it on play? Is there a way to stop that happening? Pause or something. Let's just see a second. Go up a slide. No. Let's just see if that works. Okay. I'll just carry on. Yeah, so it is jumping. That's a shame. Does anybody know how I can pause this?
Oliver, I think Jamie behind the scenes is able to change your slides. So if you just shout, if you'd like to go forwards or backwards.
Could we just go up one, please, Jamie, if you're able to do that? Sorry about this, folks. Okay, so today I was going to do a sort of pub quiz, tax quiz for you all today, and you could send your comments in to me, but I don't really believe in bullying audiences like that. So what I thought I'd do, I've got quite a lot of questions, which I'm going to fire out the questions, and then I'll give you the answers. And it's for you to jot down your ideas, really. And if you want to give me your comments or ideas to the questions, then great, and we'll discuss them. And if you don't, no problem. I'll just deliver the work and the answers on them. So if we go down one more slide, move down a slide. Right, so this is people leaving the UK. And the first question would be, if you are leaving the UK to work or to live, would you notify HMRC? Would you need to? I'll keep my eye on the comments. But yes, so the answer to that would be, you don't have to. You don't have to tell HMRC that you're leaving the UK. However, it's a very good idea to. It's like the lawyer 100 years ago who said, you don't have to wear a seatbelt, but it's a very good idea to do so to protect your risk. And that's exactly right here. There's an exit form called a P85, which you'd fill out and you tell HMRC where you're going, how long you're going for, etc. It's a really good idea to do that because it helps them track you. So the next question is, are you going to be non-resident after you leave? Well, I want you to be non-resident. That's what I'm aiming for you to be tax non-resident from when you leave. But sometimes it's not possible. You might have too strong a tie to the UK. I'm thinking you might come back too often. You might have a home here. You might have family here. Those sorts of things. They could keep you resident, but we're looking to make you tax non-resident. That's my aim. This is particularly good for Brits going to the Middle East. That's what you want. Non-resident in the UK. Residence in your host location where there's no tax or very low tax. So the last question is, what's the benefit of tax non-residence? Well, I'm going to keep that simple. There's quite a lot to that, but simply we're saying, I want you to pay 0% tax on your employment income, which is amazing, really, isn't it? So that's what we're trying to achieve. And if we didn't achieve that, we'd be taxable in two places and we'll have a bit more of a mess to sort out. We can certainly fix it, but going non-resident is great. That's the key. So that's that slide dealt with. So moving on to the next slide. Right, so next questions I've got in are just about a few quiz questions, and they're really designed for sometimes people who don't have much familiarity with the UK yet. How many days do you think you're allowed back in the UK when you're going non-resident? Well, the answer on that one is, the good rule of thumb is, well, there's no answer, frankly, but 90 days is a good start. Sometimes it's 46, but it's never 183. That's why I put the question in there. People think that to be resident again, it's a 183-day test. It just isn't for tax. So let's start with 90 and work from there. You've got to record those days as well. Keep records of boarding passes and put it in your diary, but keep 90 in your head, please. What's the UK tax year end? I always put that in mainly for Americans because it's a 5th of April tax year end, which you won't be used to. So yes, we have a very different Julian calendar year end, so that's why it's there. Okay, great. So can you be taxed in 2 countries at once? Yes, you very much can. That was the example I used before. Let's say you're a Brit going to Germany, France, the States, and you haven't gone away for long enough. So you could be taxed at home in the UK and taxed in the other country. Very common. And if you do that, we have to unmuddle that with tax credits and the like. We don't want you to be double taxed. So that's what we're doing there. It comes up a lot, actually. Okay, that's great. So next slide. The reason he's smiling, that guy, is because you can often get a refund in your year of departure on your tax return. So that's a very good thing to do. So what's the UK tax return deadline for filing in the UK? Well, it's 31 January after tax year end, so that's 10 months. Yes, that's 10 months after tax year end. Very different to other countries, and there's no extensions on that date. Some of you might be used to, I know American nationals are used to extending tax returns. We cannot. It is 31 January, hard deadline, so that's something to think about. And I'm going to drop to the bottom question there. What's the penalty for not filing on time in the UK? Well, it can be massive. A lot of you will say £100, which it is for missing 31 January, but then it escalates and it grows from there. So it can go up to about £1,200 within the year. Question from the floor, will it change if Labour get in? I don't think Labour have the time to change filing deadlines and penalties for tax. They may try and change penalties, actually, you're quite right, because Labour has said they won't change income tax and national insurance. So they are going to have to change something. And I think they're going to change capital gains tax, for example. They will have to do something to increase their budget because they need to spend on more things. So yeah, we are really up in the air at the moment. Labour are making lots of promises, which I admire them for, but there's only a certain amount of time to get all these things factored in and rolled out as new legislation. So if you're living abroad, I'm doing the middle question now on this page. Have you got to file tax returns when you're abroad? Well, basically, yes. If you come to me, you're most likely to have rental income or investment income in the UK. That's called UK source. So it's still taxable. So we've got to still file tax returns and report that. So that's a yes to tax returns. Even though you've gone abroad and you're in the Middle East, you think you're home free, you are still filing in the UK, I'm afraid. So that's that slide dealt with. Thank you. Right, I just chucked in a few general ones here. I'm going to answer the first one for you. So what are the UK rents? How are they taxable in the UK? Well, you basically take total revenue that comes in, total gross rents, and from that you take off expenses. So you can really get the taxable rents down to a small level. You take off repairs, maintenance, there's a deduction for mortgage relief, legal fees, accountancy fees. It's a long list, but if you've got rental income in the UK, let's definitely have a chat, because it might not be as daunting as you think and the tax might not be as high. So great. Do you pay NIC when you're abroad? Potentially, yes. You perhaps don't have to, but you've got to remember the voluntary NIC system that exists. It's quite a lot to go into now, but all I'm saying is there's a chance to top up your state pension while you're abroad. It's a very low cost way to do so, and the benefit is very high. So that's a really good thing to do. Look into that, have a Google or speak to me. It's a really worthwhile thing to do. The last one is, what is a double tax treaty? And I've touched on this a bit before. And what we're saying is that's where you're taxable in two places at once. And we, the UK, have agreements with many other countries. Because of the empire, basically, we've got a tax agreement with most countries on the planet. And then we have deals which prevent people getting doubly taxed. So they are a definite good Bible for me in my job to stop people getting caught. So that's great, really. It's a really useful tool. I think we're moving on to coming to the UK now, the next slide. Right, so we're switching it around now. So I'm speaking to you, Americans, Australians, Europeans, plenty of Asian clients we have as well, coming from India and Pakistan, moving to live here. And the question is, first one is, when does the 45% tax rate start? Now that is not supposed to change. I've had a question in from Stacey in a second, which I'll deal with. That's not supposed to change. The new Labour government, if they were to get in, would not change that rate, and the current government would keep the rate at 45%. It starts at £125,000, which is quite low looking at the rest of the planet. That tax rate is kicking in quite low. It used to be 150. Right, I'm going to go to a question from the board. My 401k is on an IRA in the US, and I'm nearly aging 50. And I have UK and Italian citizenship. How do I minimise the tax to save my money in the UK? Stacey, I'm very happy to answer that question if we can do it offline. If you can send me an email on that, we'll have a quick chat. I won't charge you, of course, and we'll just have a general chat about 401ks and IRAs. There's a special rule about rolling over IRAs into 401ks and when they're taxable and when they are not. So we can have a chat about that, certainly. I'd love to do that. My email was at the start and it's at the end of the presentation as well. So we're coming to that quite soon. So thank you, Stacey. That's great. So is there any expat tax release for people coming to the UK? The answer to that is hell yes. There are loads of them. So it's a really good, at the moment, there are plenty of incentives for people to come to the UK. Now, I am seeing both the shadow government and the government attacking these. I won't go too much more into that, but yes, there are. And we'll go to the next slide, please. Right, there's quite a lot to this slide. And it's just a bit of a list, so I don't want to bore you too much by just running through the list. But what we're saying is accommodation can be tax-free in the UK for the first 2 years. Now that's a mega relief, and I'll show you how that works in a minute. So all of your accommodation, rent tax-free for 2 years would be an incredible saving. I'll jump to relocation, and that's really an either or. You can have the relocation or the accommodation, not both. That is for people who are relocating here and becoming local hires. So it's different to what I was just talking about for accommodation. And there's £8,000 tax relief on that. So yeah, definitely worth looking at. And my favourite, last of all, is foreign employment gains down towards the bottom. Sorry, foreign employment income And that is where I can get you tax relief on overseas work days, and it's very lucrative as well. So if we look at the next slide, you'll see some of the numbers and the cash back. I mean, just look at those savings. For accommodation in the first year, you can save £12,000. I used a rent of £30,000 per annum, which is not unrealistic in the UK. So in London, the London area, so that would be potentially £12,000 tax rebate in the first year. Non-UK work days, equally huge. I picked a salary of 150. Now I know that's pretty high, and you might just think that I'm joking about that, but I picked that for people working in central London, possibly doing financial, banking, crypto type jobs, and there are plenty of people doing that, IT, who are on that sort of salary. So we do get those savings in the first 3 tax years. Subsistence is another one, another very nice, healthy tax rebate. So I just wanted to show you that it's not just a list of possible release. The rebate or the back payment is huge on those things. So that is that slide. Right, totally different area of tax relief now. I'm talking about non-domiciles. Why am I talking about that? Well, Rishi Sunak has been in trouble, and he's not the only one. There's plenty of MPs on both sides who've been in trouble over the non-dom rules. And those are people who were born abroad and they're keeping their income and their gains outside of UK tax. So that's what's happening here. It still exists as a tax relief. It exists for the first 7 years. It might be reformed, but it won't disappear. So I've got 2 examples here of how somebody can be non-dom or not non-dom, and then just remember that person's coming here, they're being taxed on income, and they're excluding everything abroad. I mean, what a relief that is. So you can see why it's so popular and why people are trying to attack it and reduce it. So I've got somebody, I'll come back to, I've just had a question in, which we'll deal with in a second. I was born in Texas in 1972, but then I lived in the UK for 30 years, and then I moved back to the US for 20. So what am I? Am I a UK dom because I've spent so much time there? Well, the answer is no. That person, even though they spent 30 years in the UK, could still be a non-dom, which is what upsets people a bit, I think. That person can have extra tax release because they were born in Texas, and they can say their spiritual home is the USA, and therefore they're a non-dom, and they want to claim those reliefs. So yes, so it is a wide tax relief at the moment. So the next one I've got is going the other way, something else to think about. Let's imagine it's me, born in 1980. So I was born in 1980 and I left the UK when I was 2. So I've never been in the UK really. Am I a dom? Well, yes, you are going to be a dom because your spiritual home is still where you were born, and you would have to refute that claim. So you would potentially, if you come back here, be treated as a domicile and taxable on worldwide income. Just see how unfair that really is compared to the Texas person who spent 20, 30 years here. So that's how the system works at the moment. So great, that's non-dom. It's a real hot topic. That is what they're talking about in the press whenever they talk about it and discussing reforming it. Okay, great. So that's the end of that slide. Right, so my last little questions, they were just quick pop quiz questions really for you all. And it's great to have a chat about them because they will come up. If you're coming to the UK, these phrases would come up in your taxation when you first come here. So the first one is going to be, what's a split year? Well, that's a great relief. That means you basically turn up during a year, September, and you would look to exclude all of your income for tax before that date. And that's amazing. I know that Spain doesn't do that. So Spain would, if you arrive in a tax year, you'll be taxed for the whole year in Spain. So that's a really nice, generous tax relief, which people take advantage of all the time. There's quite a few rules that underpin it, but yes, excluding income from before you arrive or excluding income after you go is very popular. So what is PAYE? So that is pay as you earn. That is the HMRC, sorry, that's the tax authority's system for collecting tax through payroll. That's all that means, but you will hear that phrase quite a bit. What is gift aid? That's when people make contributions to charity through their payroll and they get automatic tax relief. So that's just a mechanism really. It's no biggie, that one. The last one is a tax code. Now you'll all get a tax code, and that determines how much tax relief you get through payroll. I probably need to give you an example of what a tax code is, but I won't do that at the moment. Just to say that phrase will come up and it'll affect your PAYE and it'll affect your reliefs. So it's really quite, if your PAYE code goes wrong, your take-home pay goes wrong. So it's really important to get that right. So that was the end of that little quiz. I can't see it translating to a pub format, but I did my best. And then we'll just go to the final slide. I'm just getting a question through now, which is an American saying to me, if I'm an American living in the UK, can I bring my savings to the UK? Well, I would suggest that you don't do it. Well, yes, I would say don't bring your savings in, which you saved after you came to the UK. We're into the non-domicile rules there, and you can exclude income if you don't bring it in. There's a bit more to that, but that's the simple test. Don't bring it into the UK initially and chat to an advisor about it. Somebody else was just asking me about calling the HMRC, calling the tax authorities, and it being a nightmare to get through. And yes, I'm afraid it is a nightmare, and there is no way around that. And when I ring them, I just put the phone next to me and let it dial for half an hour or so, because they are very competent when you get through, but they're short of people, and there's no way around the wait, I'm afraid. There is talk of any new government putting more money into HMRC, and I hope that either side does that, because at the moment they're short of resources. So great.
Oliver, I think that's the end of the slides and presentation, and thank you very much. Really interesting, and it's a really nice way of doing it, asking the questions and answering, because those are the questions I think a lot of people have. There are more questions coming in. Should we keep going?
Is that okay? Yeah, I'm happy to do some more.
Fantastic. So somebody asked, what are the most common tax mistakes expats make when moving to a new country?
I think the thing you do is you imagine it's the same tax year, which it isn't, because the UK is that 5th of April thing, that, you know, that quirk that nobody seems to have. And I think you imagine you get the same reliefs. I won't go into massive detail, but if you're an American, you're used to mortgage relief and you think your tax is going to go down for that. And, you know, just lots of things. Every system is totally different. So, you know, you need to meet somebody, really. It doesn't have to be me, but you should take half an hour with somebody to walk through the basics.
Somebody says, I think it probably applies more to expats who move to the UK, that they can't get through to HMRC when they call. Any advice?
Yeah, I was just saying that they don't really pick up the phone, and there's no answer to that. But what I've been, you might find this ridiculous, but I have been writing to my MP on this. So, and that works. That's your backup. If you're not getting any response from HMRC for whatever reason, I do write a little 2-line letter to the MP and say, can you prioritise my case? And it actually works, would you believe? I know that sounds ridiculous, but it is desperate times at the moment with HMRC.
So somebody says, if I'm an expat living in the Middle East, can I send money back to the UK? I assume that means whether it then becomes taxable in the UK if you're a non-UK resident.
Yes, you can. That is the answer to that. It's not. That's the simple answer. I tell people to put it in a separate bank account so it looks separate. It's ring-fenced. But yes, you can do that.
And you don't then pay UK tax when you
send
it back?
We'll always worry about that. And if it's Saudi earnings, or sorry, Middle Eastern earnings, then no, it's tax-free.
If I'm an American living in the UK, can I bring my US savings into the UK? Would they become taxable in that scenario?
I think that's a no. We'd say, to keep it simple, it's a no. You can bring in historic savings, but it gets muddled. So the best answer is no, and speak to somebody. Then you can structure your bank accounts and you can get around it. But the first pass has to be, don't do anything until you talk to somebody.
So this question just come up on the screen. Can you provide strategies for expats to minimize their tax liabilities legally? It's a very general, yes, wide-ranging question, I imagine.
Absolutely. We always do that. That's the little mini projects we get all the time. They'll say, I'm coming in tomorrow for 2 years. Can you help me? And we just go through everything. We do a health check to look at what they're earning and how long they want to be there and about their families. And then we sit down and we provide a list of minimization techniques they're all within ICTA, the ICTA or IT for the tax return, the tax legislation.
And I suppose depending what country you're coming from, or if you have income in other countries, so the UK has tax treaties. You touched on this in your presentation with lots of other countries, and do the details vary so that there are different kind of benefits depending which other country you're dealing with?
Yes, absolutely, they do. The treaties are different. They are different depending on the age of the treaty and other things. They are very much different. The UK and the US are quite cozy, and they've produced a very tax-friendly treaty between them, but other countries are harsher and treaties are shorter, so they are different.
People often ask, I think I may need to file a UK tax return. What do I do?
Yes.
Again, that's quite general, but in the case, for example, a Brit who's moved abroad and they're not sure, what should they do?
They should probably speak to us, really. And again, I don't charge for that chat, and we'll just diagnose whether they do or not. But if you were going abroad and you had rents or bank interest or that sort of thing, yes, you would file. If you're coming here and you're going to be claiming tax relief, so yes, you would file. So generally, with an expat, the answer is yes. It's often to the advantage of the expat as well.
What if you're, for example, if you're British, you move abroad, but you're still working for a British company and being paid in the UK, but you're not living in the UK? Do you have UK tax liabilities in that scenario?
If you shouldn't do, no. If you've broken residence for tax, you should be tax-free on that. You might be subject to PAYE and then have to claim it back. But yes, you could be paid on a UK payroll and be non-resident, definitely.
Somebody asked, are you taking on new clients?
The answer is absolutely we are. Yes, I'm here to chat for the session. We can go by email. Mauritius, I've done Mauritius. If somebody is asking about a potential move to Mauritius, and we've done Mauritius before, so we've got contacts there, so we can definitely help with that. Yeah,
so you can get in touch if anyone's interested. You can get in touch with Oliver via the expatfocus.com. There's a services tab in the top navigation. Just look under there and you can reach Oliver that way. Let's just see if we've got a couple of minutes left. So I think you may have covered this. Somebody said, have either of the political parties in the UK said what they'll do with non-dom rules if they win the upcoming election? Are we expecting changes?
Yes. I think the big thing to talk about with non-doms is it's normally about the first 7 years that you get that relief at a cheap rate, not free. There would be a charge, but then the Conservative Party said they would change it to 4 years, which is one of the shortest periods in Europe. That seemed to be one of the meanest. But yes, that's what the big plan was, and then they dropped that because the Tory government have run out of time. But Labour is talking about doing something similar, and they need to fill a gap in their spending. So I think Labour will do it if they were to get in. So
either way, there's likely to be that change. You're sort of shortening the time.
Yes, 4 years, and yes, and even tighter on some people who've already been here. So it's going to greatly restrict.
So if somebody's moving abroad, still has some income in the UK, such as rents, are there any strategies you can outline briefly how they can minimize UK tax liability if they have UK tax liability?
Yes, what we do on that is we do a little health check on their rental property. We make a long list of all the expenses we can deduct, and there are quite a few. So sit down and the repairs, maintenance, gardening, cleaner, we do all of that. And it sounds a little bit tedious, but it really gets your taxes down. So it's worth doing.
Fantastic. And expats moving to the UK, you already covered, which is that scenario where you have to sit down and go through their situation. But you mentioned you offer that consultation without charging.
That's right. Yes, we just talk to people definitely when we have them. Definitely.
Fantastic. Well, sorry.
I was going to say, I think that's it really. Apart from war stories about people who aren't paying tax at all who come to me, I don't think we can talk about much else. People do approach me saying, I want to hide this money here or there. And of course, we just can't even go there. But it is a natural question. People say, well, they don't need to know about the Spanish villa, do they? And we just have to say that we have to know about everything. I'm afraid that's the kind of firm we are. Most practitioners are like that in the market. It's got to be totally bona fide.
Isn't it the case that most countries sort of exchange that information now anyway? So
yeah, actually, even the Swiss banks, because there used to be that big Privacy Act, didn't there? But they now volunteer Swiss banking interest. They send it to the UK. So the world has changed, you know.
Fantastic, Oliver, thank you very much. I'm going to drop you out. And
thank you, Hugo.
Thank you. And welcome, Euan McLachlan. Euan, it's good to see you. How are you?
Good afternoon, Hugo. Good to see you too.
So just for our viewers to introduce you, Euan is an expert in international currency transfer and foreign exchange. You first worked in the FX industry 20 years ago,
Yeah,
then returned
previously.
to it 10 years ago.
Yes.
And over many years, the landscape has greatly changed, but the same elements remain the same. Security, customer service, and probably most importantly for most people, competitive rates of exchange.
Yep.
Euan's focus is on the private client side of FX, and he has assisted many hundreds of clients to move funds between currencies and to most countries around the world. So, Euan, so let me get your presentation up and hand over.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah, so good afternoon, everyone, whoever's listening. As Hugo said, yeah, my name's Euan, and I've been in FX now for 10 years straight. And in a previous life, when I still lived in Scotland, I did work in FX for another 3 years. So combined total of 13 years experience. And as I said, the landscape has changed for foreign currency transactions and international money transfers. I think when I started in the industry, certainly 20 years ago, but even the 10 years ago, many people hadn't heard about your alternative options to using a bank. So that's kind of the first thing that we try to cover is, well, why would you use a broker? Why not just use your bank? The simple answer is that banks have got many, many things to look after. They've got the high street branches still just about in the UK. They'll do mortgages, do credit cards, they do loans. They arrange many, many things. So the foreign exchange element for banks will typically drop way down their list of priorities. It's just not something they give an awful lot of importance to. So brokers will look at nothing else, essentially. Yes, we might do certainly some different products and we will look after businesses and private clients. But within that, all we do is take one currency and flip it into another currency and send it on to where a client asks us to. Now, one thing to remember is that we are not what's known as a speculative broker. So I think some people, when they first get introduced to the world of FX, there is a fear element because they think it's Wolf of Wall Street and we're all gambling with money and we're trying to make money from people's hard-earned cash. We're not. We don't do anything to do with speculation. So we're purely what's known as a deliverable broker. So we can only take funds from one currency, exchange them into another currency, and then send them on to another location. That's the only thing we do. So that's why brokers such as ourselves, such as Corpay, will get you a better exchange rate because we can't make money any other way, whereas a bank can. Now, obviously, within that, we have to be able to compete with the banks. So we will offer highly competitive exchange rates. Banks in the past, we used to say that they would offer a range of 3 to 5% off the prevailing rate. That's really not true anymore. And without going through checks on banks on a daily basis to prove that, we tend not to claim that anymore. So we will typically just say that we will offer you the most competitive exchange rate that we can get. And that's based on certain factors like the volume, what the market's doing at the time. And then, as I'll come on to later, dependent on the actual product that the client decides to pick, whatever product is best for somebody to use given their scenario. We do have different options available to us. There's not many, but there are some that can help you maximize what you get at the other end for your cash. And if you look at a currency broker, and we're not the only one out there, I always say that there's many good currency brokers out there alongside Corpay. They can give you market updates, rate alerts. You've got somebody who, let's be honest, FX is an absolutely boring subject. I have absolutely no interest in it other than it's my job because it doesn't affect me. It doesn't impact me. I'm not about to move to Cyprus tomorrow. So what the pound to euro rate's doing other than for my clients isn't relevant to me. It won't impact me at all. So we have currency dealers and currency specialists who will sit and look at markets all day long, every day. You've got them on tap. If you want to register with a broker such as yourself, you've got them to tap into their knowledge and their experience and their expertise and what market trends they see. Because although the market moves every 3 seconds, there will be trends where if it's trying to climb up, or if there are if there are market forces that are driving it down. The big thing that the currency markets don't like is surprises. And the most obvious one for us in the UK is when we voted for Brexit. People really didn't think we were going to vote for Brexit, and it took the pound to euro rate overnight down by many, many cents, and people gained or lost quite a lot of money on the back of that. So that's the things that the currency market don't like. Things that they can predict: an upcoming election. We've got one coming where if the polls really show that they think one party is going to win, the markets will start to factor that in. So there won't be a big shock in the currency markets if the polls prediction is correct. If the polls are predicting a Labour win and it doesn't happen, then the markets can react because they weren't ready for that. They didn't expect that to be. If you register with a broker such as Corpay, you'll be given a dedicated point of contact. So depending on whether you're doing monthly transfers, one big transfer, you've got different requirements. You'll have that person on hand to talk through what's the best routes and options for you to use from your currency broker. And they're there at the end of the phone. You've got the direct number, so you're not having to go through a call centre. And I'm not trying to run the banks down, but if you're working with a bank, the odds of you speaking to the same person, you certainly can't walk into a high street branch and discuss foreign currency transfers with somebody in the branch. So the dedicated point of contact is very good to remove any stresses and strains from the transaction. And I will move on to the next slide. Corpay are a relatively new company to me. We used to be known as a different company, as some people may have heard of us as Global Reach, and prior to that, we're actually known as FC Exchange. So the business has been around for 15 years, but Corpay, for me, is a relatively new employer. So we've been owned by them for just over a year now, and they are possibly the largest. It's one of these things, how do you claim, how do you measure who's the biggest? We are certainly one of the largest non-bank payment providers in the market now. We're a New York Stock Exchange listed company with a global presence. We've got offices here in the UK. We have offices in Spain, in Holland, in France, in India now, I can't think of other places, in Canada, in America. So we have a global presence, and that obviously helps us with the global clients, because of its time frames and just that local knowledge and ability to assist clients. So although we are part of a massive company within the private client division, we almost operate still as a small autonomous business. So we've got 200 people in the London office, but of them 4 or 5 will be looking after private clients, and then myself, I'm actually based down in the southwest of the UK, down in Cornwall, and there are 7 of us operate out of this office. So we try to keep that very personal, hands-on approach with the clients. Sorry, a question just popped up. I think we'll come to the questions at the end. Hugo, is that the best route? So, yeah.
Yes.
So sorry, I've lost my trend there. So yeah, we operate very much still almost as a very small company, although we've got this backing of this massive company. And all that really does is give us the ability to offer the most competitive exchange rates because of the volume that Corpay transacts on a daily basis between its corporate clients and its private clients. Currency exchange is no different from going into a warehouse or a cash and carry to buy a box of Mars bars. If you're a large shop and you want to buy hundreds of thousands of Mars bars, then the price is likely to be better for you than somebody walking in to buy one box of Mars bars. Currency really works in the same way. It's no more complicated than that. It's a volume-driven business. So if you're buying lots of euros with pounds, then we still buy the euros directly from a bank. So the bank that we go to, if we're buying hundreds of thousands of euros, we will get a slightly better rate than is advertised on, say, Google. If you Google the exchange rate and look at that pound to euro or dollar to euro, or whatever pairing we're looking at, we can't achieve that rate. We get very, very close to it, and certainly no private individual can get anywhere near that rate. And it's something to look out for if you are starting to look, if you're an expat or about to become an expat and you're looking really at the currency markets for the first time. When you Google the exchange rate, that's a rate that's not available to anyone. That might be available to multinational banks moving currency between themselves, but even to us as Corpay, we'll buy very, very close to that. And then what we do is pass on the strength, the buying strength that we've got to our clients. I think in the introduction, Hugo mentioned that I've been in the industry for sort of your combined time of 13 years, and it has changed in that time. But for me, certainly being a very canny, tight Scotsman, one of the key things to look out for is security. And we've always said that we are an FCA authorised business in the UK, and then we hold relevant authorisations in different offices around the world. And that's very important because it means that we have to operate segregated client accounts. So the money that a client sends us never belongs to Corpay. It enters through one of our banking partners, and the one that we still use and have for years, amongst others, is Barclays. So any client funds would sit in a Barclays account, ring-fenced in their name, with any director or anyone of any note in Corpay has no access to that money other than the request, really, from Barclays that they would move it on for them. Excuse me. As I sort of touched on the FCA authorisation, one thing I would always stress that is important is that if you're looking around at brokers and you're looking at options for moving your money, do check that the company you're speaking with is registered with the FCA. Now, most brokers nowadays are, and there are companies out there that operate under what we call a white label. I'm not going to say that they don't do what they should do, but you won't see them on an FCA register because they are a company that's set up, and what they do is they power their transactions by a third party. So they'll go to somebody who does hold their own credit lines, has the banking relationships, and they facilitate the transaction through them. So I won't run them down, but just be careful that if you do look at one of them, you won't see them on an FCA register because they are not directly authorised by the FCA. They hold they take the authorisation from the third party that they use. One thing that is very basic but is very beneficial with a broker is the ability to run traces on payments. And as Corpay, we can almost instantly get the trace on where the funds are in a transaction process. Now, we get very few that go wrong, and but they do occasionally get held up by a bank, especially if you're sending funds from here to the US. The funds will go through certainly different routing channels, and one of the routing banks can hold it up. We have the ability to straight away trace and see where the funds are sitting. So if anyone's got any anxieties about, well, I did the transaction yesterday, you said the funds left you yesterday, they've not reached me yet, we can find out where they are. And again, keep saying that I'm not going to run the banks down, but trying to get that response from a bank, if you do it, will be a bit slower than using a broker such as ourselves. I mentioned earlier on that we have different products available. Now, the three products that we've got really are what's called the spot contract, limit order, and a forward contract. So taking each of them in turn, the spot contract is still by far and away our biggest product. So that is literally if somebody has registered with us and they're looking at relocating to America, they registered with us 6 months ago, they've sat and watched the rate, but they haven't done anything about it. The time has come for them to move, and they speak to us today because they want the funds there within the next couple of days. The spot rate is what's available on the day. So we will look at the spot rate and say it's $1.2840 at the minute. We can offer you $1.2710. Is you happy with that rate? And that's the spot rate. We can't really do much to move it at the time, because if client has got to the point where they really need to get the funds there within the next few days, that's what we're working with. So the spot rate is still the most common one that we use. Limit order for me is I say it's my favourite, but it is because there's a degree of flexibility in a limit order, especially if you are an expat and you've gone through visa processes and you are looking to move. So you've got some kind of time frame for when you know you will be in your destination country. So you've registered with your broker, you've done that bit. Then you speak to your personal point of contact, and they will look at what the market's doing. So again, we'll use pound to dollar. If you're saying, well, it has been hovering up towards the 129s. I really, really would like to get $1.28 for my exchange. We can set that target figure in the market. And if we're all happily asleep at 2 in the morning and the currency markets are still moving and that figure is achieved, it will automatically buy the currency for you. But the flexibility with the limit order comes that you don't need to give any money once we set it up. So you still only pay for the order at the time that it executes. So you're not having to secure a deposit to secure the rate, because we're not actually buying the currency at the time. All we're doing is setting a target in the market and saying we want to achieve $1.28. And if that's achieved, great. If it's not achieved and you get to the point where you're moving, then you're flipping back to the spot rate, but it does give you that flexibility. On the flip side, you can also set a lower limit. If you think, I absolutely can't afford to take anything less than $1.25, we can set that in the market. People tend not to, for one reason, the dealer will be keeping an eye on it anyway. Your personal point of contact will be keeping an eye on the market, and if they see your currency pairing slipping away, they will generally have the book of clients and they'll contact them to say, just to give you a heads up that it is slipping and we're looking at a trend where it is likely to keep going down. So they'll try and keep the client informed of that. Forward contract is one that we do still have a number of clients using it. It's very, very good if you have got a fixed time when you're moving. You can lock in a rate for 2 years, but it can only be done against a property purchase. So you can't simply say, I want to send my savings, I'll be moving within the next year, so I'll book in a rate now because it looks good. It's used when the rate is favourable, but more often it's used for people who really want to budget. So if they know they're buying a property and they need $300,000 or euros or whatever to buy that property, they can work back to what that's going to cost them in sterling, or depending on where the money's coming from, and you can lock in the rate. So if the rate's good and you know that to get that $300,000 will cost you £210,000 at this present time, you can lock in the rate. Now, a forward does tie you in. So whereas the limit order gives you the flexibility to say, actually, can you just cancel that and I'll just book a spot? When you execute on a forward, you are actually entering a contract. So you are committed to buying the currency. As a company, we will take anything between 5 and 10% deposit to secure that rate, because although we're not doing it, we may not draw down on that contract for 2 years. We will physically go into the market and buy the currency and hold that currency for the client. So that's why we ask for a deposit on that. So it takes away a bit of the flexibility that you get with the limit order, but great if you want to budget. It really is a handy tool if you just want to know what it's going to cost you to buy that property in whatever time frame you've got. So the forward doesn't have to be for 2 years. It can be a short forward. You can have a forward for as little as a couple of months, but up to a maximum of 2 years, you can lock in an exchange rate if it's favourable for you at the time and you think that's what you want to do. One thing I should say is any currency broker, such as ourselves, is not licensed to give advice. So we can't say to somebody, the rate's really good, you should book it in. That's not what we're here for. We're here to give you information, as much information as you want or don't want, about where the rate is and what it might do. But it's your money. It's not our money to play with. We can't, as I said at the start, we don't speculate. It's your money, so it's down to the client to decide when they make that transaction. We will give them as much information as we can about what the rate may or may not do, but it's down to the client to make the decision. So we're not licensed to give advice in that sense. How does it work? It's actually a very simple process. There is no cost to setting up with a broker. You simply register for a no obligation account, and I try and steer away from using the word account, but inevitably do, because it makes it sound like you're having to deposit funds. You don't. You're simply registering, and with us being a financial organisation, we do have to do KYC and satisfy anti-money laundering requirements. So we need to make sure that the client we're representing is who they say they are. So that's when you register for an account. We will do background checks, but there's no credit check. We don't, because we're not extending any credit to a client. We simply need to verify that you are who you say you are. Once you've gone through that process, you will then be given your dedicated point of contact in the dealing team. They'll introduce themselves, get to understand a bit more about what your requirements are, and that's when they'll talk through more about the spot options, the limit options, the forward contract, the timing of your trade. Are you doing one lump sum? Do you want to split the transaction? We don't offer hedging to private clients, but some clients do hedge. They'll say, well, at the minute, I'll do some just now because I want to get some over to wherever they're moving to. So however the client wants to do it, that's when you've got that personal point of contact to talk through about your best options. And again, I will say it, that you won't get that from a bank. You don't get those options from a bank. Banks typically offer just the spot rate certainly to private clients, and that's the only option you've got. As I said, it's down to the client when they book the trade. We won't give advice. We won't say, rate's fantastic today. If I was you, I'd book that. That's not what we're here for. We can tell them the rate is good, and if they think it is good, and it's down to them to book it. Once you book an exchange rate, and once you speak to excuse me, your point of contact, and you lock in that rate, you are entering an obligation. So we will give a client 2 days to pay us. So once the rate is booked in, what we've quoted you, what we will tell you is in dollars, is what you will receive at the other end. The only thing to look out for is some banks levy what's called a landing fee. We've obviously got no control over that, and it seems to be very, very arbitrary across countries about when the landing fee is charged and how much it is, depending from country to country. Excuse me. But when you agree the rate with your dealer, that's fixed in. If you're happy with it, they'll book it in, and then they'll give you all the information that you need to get the funds to us, and then they'll ask you to provide the update for where you want the funds to go to. For pounds to euros, for example, if we have the funds with us in the morning, the euros will typically be in the destination account that afternoon. Dollars is more or less the same. Once we get into more exotic currencies, we do always say allow 2 days, but it's rare that currency takes more than 24 hours to arrive within the destination account. In summary, why would you use a broker rather than a bank? And it is simple. It does come down to the security needs to be there. The customer service can be better, and certainly we should be able to offer a more competitive rate of exchange. We have got the different products to maybe give you some more flexibility and maximise what you receive on the other end. I will reiterate again, do try and make sure that any broker you speak with has direct authorisation from the relevant regulatory body. It's a big bee in my bonnet that making sure it's secure. It is best to register in advance. I know that some people say, oh, I'll get to that when I get to it. That's fine. We can help a client at the last minute. It's not a problem. But especially if you are in a time frame where you know you're going to be moving at a certain period, it's worth getting you set up in advance, because it doesn't cost you anything. It will just get you familiar with your dealer. They get familiar with your scenario, your situation, to see what's best for you. Excuse me. I think we are nearly done. Yeah. So yes, you can get in touch. Your partnerreferrals@corpay.com is a generic email that comes to myself and 3 or 4 of my colleagues. And then you've also got the link for Expat Focus landing page. But that covers off my presentation for the minute.
Thank you very much, Euan. That was really interesting. And yeah, just to reiterate, you can, alongside those contact details, you can also access quotes from Corpay via the Expat Focus website and the services tab in the top menu. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think, all expats have to transfer money from time to time, pretty much, I think. And, your first inclination is to head to your kind of bank, and it's a mistake. I mean, I think particularly for large amounts. Yeah. And so I think that was one of the first questions that came in. Do you have a minimum amount? Is it, if it's smaller amounts, does it need to be kind of regular, or how does that work?
The minimum we quote for a client on a one-off transfer, so if somebody only ever intends to use us for one transaction, would be £3,000 equivalent currency. The only reason we say that is that anything under that, we won't really be able to show the client a saving. For all the service that we can provide on an amount, a one-off transfer under that, we won't really show them much for saving. So we tend to steer them back to the bank, or touching on a couple of other slightly different brokers who've done a great job of heightening the awareness that brokers exist and that there are other options to use, are Wise and Revolut. So on small regular transactions, shouldn't really promote the competition, but they are fantastic and they really are good. Where we're different from them is that, as you said, Hugo, a second ago, on the larger transactions, certainly we give a bit more flexibility. There's that personal service, you've got a point of contact there. But also we are a traditional broker in the sense that we buy the currency. Wise are what's known as peer-to-peer. So they match up people sending currencies from different places. And it's not quite as simple as I'm going to make it sound, but if I know that somebody in France is sending euros and I want to send pounds, they'll match us up and then the pounds and the euros transfer. They do have the ability to go into the market and buy the currency, but they don't. The thing to look out for is what's the amount receivable, because Wise will operate in a slightly different way to us. We take a margin off the notified exchange rate. So we will deduct a certain amount, and that's our fee. So although we say there's no fee, we do make money from it, and that's where we make it in the difference between what the prevailing rate is and what we offer to the client. Wise will advertise what we call the mid-market rate, but then they will take a fee. So it's two very slightly different ways of operating, but ultimately what people should be looking out for is what's received. Our rate will look worse than Wise, but ultimately it's what's received at the other end is what people should be looking out for.
I think that's as you say, those are kind of useful for small amounts, but if you have questions, if you need some hand holding, which for larger amounts, it's important to have, then Corpay is going to be a better option and a huge saving compared. I think, if you're a larger amount, if an expat's buying a property, a car, even, larger expenses, then it's a huge saving of probably thousands.
It can run to quite a sizable sum of money, Hugo. You're correct. Absolutely.
Another question: how long does it take to complete a transfer? I think you covered this, but just to.
Really, in terms of as long as we've got the funds with us, so quite a number of clients will actually deposit funds on account with us because they know if they've made the decision they're going to use us, they will quite often deposit the funds. We've got funds in account. We're also registered as what's called an e-money institution, so we're legally allowed to hold funds indefinitely in the same way as a bank. Some brokers don't have that authorization, so it really should be funds in, funds out. But because we've got that additional level of authorization, we can hold the funds for that period of time. So clients will deposit funds in account. If that's the case and they agree a rate, then literally the dealer will hit the button to release the funds straight away, and then they're gone. And like I say, if it's pounds to euro transaction, it'll be there later that day. And if it's dollar, it'll still usually be certainly within the 24-hour period. So as quickly as the client can get the funds to us, that allows us to get the funds there, expedite the funds straight away to the client's destination account. So it's a very quick process.
And can you transfer to all currencies and countries?
Not all. Some are on the delightful banned list, unfortunately. And from time to time, the currencies that we can operate will change. For example, the Ukrainian hryvnia came off when things went wrong in that part of the world. We won't transfer rubles at the minute either. I think there's only about 7 or 8 countries that are on the banned destinations list. Outside of that, there are some currencies we don't hold currency accounts for. Strangely enough, the Icelandic krona is one, and I think that goes back to Iceland having quite a financial situation. It's a good number of years ago, maybe 15 to 20 years ago. So for whatever reason, we've just never opened up an Icelandic krona account again. But quite often in some countries where their own incumbent currency is a bit volatile and not particularly stable, quite often the banks and the financial institutions there will receive dollars or euros. So even though there may be some limits there's quite often there is a currency that we can send to those countries. So, but essentially, globally, and we are expanding that as we talk, because as I said, Corpay is now a very, very big company. So while global reach as we were may not have had capabilities in certain countries, Corpay did. So our currency range is actually expanding as well.
Somebody asks, what long-term trends do you see in the FX market, and how should expats prepare for future potential changes?
Long-term trends in the FX market, I think there are more brokers out there than when I started, many, many more. And I think keep looking at it from that point of view, I think the options for people looking to move money are better and better and far more competitive. We obviously, as I said, we make our money from the margin that we take off an exchange rate. And while we were always governed to a certain limit that you can't be taking margins above a certain percentage, we can't take the margins that we used to, is probably the simplest way to put it. People are far more clued up about how exchange rates work, what they should be looking for. And again, that's probably thanks to Wise, mainly how they've educated people. So I think people will have far more choice. There will be greater options. I think the speed of transactions will increase. I think AI is going to obviously have an impact on it, and not too distant future, actually. I mean, it's probably not far away, but I certainly think technology is improving how quickly and how easily, and the transparency of transactions. So I think, if anything, in terms of being an expat and how you move your money, I think it's tenfold better than it was even a couple of years ago. And I
Yeah,
think
good.
that choice is only going to increase. Certainly for the time being, I can see a consolidation at some point in the years to come, that all this, I'm not saying Corpay because it's big makes it good, but the smaller firms may struggle to compete with some of the developments. So that's where I think in the years to come, again, 3 or 4 years, we may see a consolidation back. But at the moment, there's just nothing but really expansion and more options for people.
Yeah, which is good for expats.
It is. It means they get the best rates around.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you very much for your presentation.
Not at all. Thank you.
We've come to the end of the Expat Focus Health and Finance Summit in 2024. Thanks to Euan for that great presentation, and to our other experts. If you require a quotation, you can do that via the Expat Focus website, service dropdown, as I've mentioned, or contact the experts directly. If you'd like to contact Bessa, who's not on the Expat Focus website at the moment, her website is bessaaliti.com. And thank you to all of our expert speakers for their time, the valuable insights they've shared. A recording of all the presentations will be available shortly on the Expat Focus YouTube channel, so subscribe to that to watch the presentations back and check out other videos for expats there. And in fact, subscribe to all our social channels and our email newsletter to stay connected and receive news about our future events. So all that remains to say thank everyone for joining us, and I hope you'll have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.